Are we good? Can you guys hear us online?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Board of Finance. Well, this is me, Mike Anderson, Chair, Dan Smith, Vice Chair, Gary Anino, Carl Johnston. Winona Burdine is going to be substituted for Sarah, who's not here right now. And Amy Friend is our alternate and secretary. We have Laura Brown here with us tonight, our finance director, and joining us is First Selectman Bob Carlson and Lou Gingerella, sorry, our newest member. I knew I was missing somebody. The guy without a phone. On to the second thing is public comment. We have no public in the room. They're all at a basketball game. Any public comment online? If so, raise your hand. Hearing none. Correspondence. The only correspondence we had, are things we're gonna go over a little bit on number 5. We got the January financials from the Board of Ed. And, I'm sorry, right. And, the non-lapsing account. And also sent forward, a letter of support from Brian Rathman, regarding the Wheeler Library, funding for their renovation. Anyone have any comments or concerns on correspondence at this point? On to number 4. We'll have Bob talk to us about the general government budget.
Okay, so last night at the Board of Selectmen meeting, we approved our cuts to this point. We did not do anything with the capital budget since we pretty much agreed with that earlier. So we worked just on the government operating budget. What I did is I did a review sheet just to give you I thought the best way to do is go through the review sheet first, which simplifies those areas which are most affected, the buckets on the budget where there's been the most change. And then I'm not going anywhere at this point. If you want to go through line by line, pick whatever you want to ask. I'm pretty familiar with the entire budget. So by all means, I'd be glad to answer questions. Just to look at the review sheet to start. So in the 2023, 2024, we had 22,519,599 in revenue. This year's revenue is projected to be 23,429,561.51. So that's an increase of $910,002.51. So that's an increase. What's the major contributing factors to that? Well, property taxes by far the biggest. When Darrell's here, he talked about the grand list. So that equates to, it's mostly just regular property tax, and some is going to be in past taxes, but our current tax collector has done such a good job on past taxes where she's grabbed anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 more than we anticipated. She's done such a good job. We don't expect that much in the way of back taxes anymore because there's not as much out there. So with those two numbers combined, it's 654,533, which is 2/3 of the overall increase that we're going to experience this year in revenue. Short-term investments is what the treasurer, Sean Murphy, did along with our past admin finance director and Susan Pike, our accounting generalist. And they took money and opened up CDs. Because we opened up those CDs at good interest rates, anywhere from 4 3/4 to 5%, and we have 4 of them running right now with $500,000 in each one, as well as what we call a sweep account, which we put our money in and we sweep money from that account to pay bills on a regular basis. By moving that money, we're going to realize $60,000 additional in interest. Education cost sharing is what comes to the town from the state in Hartford. That increase is $76,103 dollars. And the sale of vehicles. Now, the sale of vehicles has 3 vehicles at $20,000 each. We can only sell those vehicles if the capital budget stays the same. If we're not buying a truck, we can't sell the one we have. So if, let's say that somewhere the Board of Finance decides that they're gonna touch capital after all, and they're gonna say, Bob, you're gonna have to pick up another 100,000 somewhere, and I can't do it through my budget, and I have to lose a truck, then I'm also gonna have to take $20,000 out of revenue. So that's what we have for revenue, 910,000. Now, the government operating budget, which is B1 in your budget, so you can be looking at kind of both at the same time if you'd like. So any department that increased by more than $10,000, I pulled out and put onto the summary sheet. So that one is not a big increase. It's 11,232. But I just wanted to let you know how it happened. So it was 252,021 last year. It's 263,253 this year. I did not round my numbers because Gary wanted to see cents. Well, he didn't think everything ended in a 00, so that's why it's that way. And the major factors in this is salary lines, both contractual and non-contractual. And we did, in talking to our current grant writer who's doing less and less for the town, he's too busy. He can only work on a grant that he's already done previously to update it. We knocked another 3,500 out of that line. So that gives us a net increase in expense of 11,232.69. And like I said, we can go back to each one of these sections, and I'll be glad to talk about any line item in those sections. This is just an overview. Next is B20 fixed charges. You can see that there's a big increase here. The difference is 113,606. But you all can see, also can see on B2005, the contributing factor is 112,000, almost 113,000 is in medical insurance. So basically that entire increase is for medical insurance, which is something we can't, the things we can't work with as far as deducting is contractual and things like medical insurance that we can't negotiate it. On B26, public safety, there's an $88,448 difference. The 2 biggest contributing factors there are 25,000 for the Ambulance Association, which was 50,000, which we cut last night from 50 to 25,000. And the second one was the per diem staffing for the North Stonington Fire Company. In their presentation, they noted that during the ARPA funds, 3 years we had ARPA funds, we were able to get 1 per diem. We added 1. The town was paying for 1 and the ARPA was paying for 1, but now the ARPA funds are over. So does the town have the appetite to keep with 2 per diem staff? We, as the Board of Selectmen, feel like he made a good case on why we need to. And those 2 are always the same 2 people. I think that it runs a pool of maybe 10 to 12 different people that make up those 2. But that, again, that's 88,448. Public Works, there's a difference of 28,311.10. The biggest contributing factor there is labor and wages, which is 29,795. You actually see that the 29,795 is bigger than the actual difference was, and that's because the Public Works Department did have some line items that decreased. So if you take that out of actually the Highway Department's pretty flat with what it was last year. And the transfer station, there's a $27,518 increase, but this SCARA tipping fees are $31,017.25. So in summary on this, contractual obligations and non-negotiable expenses drive the BOS budget. The medical insurance leading the way, followed by contractual pay increases and tipping fees. If the BOS budget, along with the town's capital budget, survive as presented, that would leave $427,588 in the unspent revenue increase, which was $910,000. That's if you ask, which I don't expect, but if you ask me to do nothing, leave everything alone, the Board of Ed would have $427,588 to spend and still maintain a flat budget. Now, that's the short version. if you'd like to look at the budget itself, the first 2 pages, we know everything that starts with an A is revenue. Everything that starts with B is expense, and everything that starts with a C is capital. I'll answer any questions on the budget. I'll try to answer.
So first, can I go?
Yes.
The 60,000 increase. Sean sent us an attachment through Mike that showed 96,100. Is that phasing? Meaning part of it's hitting this year as opposed to the 60,000 next year?
Well, some yes and some no. We also, excuse me, we already had 20,000 budgeted. So this 80,000, if it was 80,000, it'd be a $60,000 increase from the 20 we had budgeted. He also found that when he originally figured out how much money we're gonna make on the sweep account.
Yep.
He thought they were gonna be able to put we run at $6 million on a regular basis. They don't sweep the whole 6 million all the time because we're constantly spending, we keep a bucket of 3 million in the bank. So
Right.
we're only collecting the interest on 3 million, not the full 6. So the number he had originally was, I think it was 100, a little over 100 and some odd thousand, 110, 108, dropped down to 80 something.
Okay.
And to be conservative, rather than say, we could have maxed this out and said, we're probably gonna have an increase of revenue about 70, 75, but to be conservative, he left it at 60.
No, and that's fine. I wanted to make sure that we highlighted that he's, the efforts he and the rest of the town did are making us more than the 60. I knew it wasn't, wasn't the 100, which was originally, and I saw 96 as our last number.
And plus,
We're a little south of that.
and plus some of the CDs, we had ones that started last April. It's just maturing. They're not all starting and stopping in the same calendar year. And that's skewing it somewhat also.
Got it. Thanks.
Lou,
Are you budgeting a percentage rate or just a dollar amount?
say that again?
Are you budgeting a percentage rate for the upcoming year or just a?
Well, if you look at the
flat-
cover page,
flat dollar?
if you look at this page right here, it
Right.
tells you that 259,398, which is the entire increase from last year's budget, is a 4.67% increase. And also capital is $223,016. That's a 53.68% increase over last year, but we knew that we were gonna do something different with capital. So that's why those two combined is only a 202.14% increase, but it's not a true number because the education budget's not in here.
Excuse me, but no, what I was asking was you were talking about the interest income. And I was asking,
Oh.
you budgeted a dollar amount. You didn't project the interest rate that you will earn on those investments.
Right, so the CDs we have now, we know what those are, and those are 12-month CDs. We, anything that's gonna roll over now, he knows what the interest rate's gonna be for the one that's gonna start in April. The one that's gonna start a year from September, we don't know what that is, but we're gonna budget it down. He's being conservative. He knows it's not gonna be 5, maybe not even 3, it might be closer to 3.95. So we're not over budget, we're not overestimating in revenue. That's the last thing you want to do. So if anything, we're underestimating in revenue.
Bad guy.
No, it's a broader discussion, but the next thing, just before we delve into the dollars and cents, the per diem firefighter, now that the ARPA funds have gone away, is something that we need to think about how we're gonna solve as opposed to just bumping the budget to absorb it. I mean, it's obviously something we need. We had pennies from heaven with ARPA. But I'd really like to understand more about how we approach that. But we can wait for a broader discussion.
Well, I think that one thing you do is you can request the chief come back to discuss that with you, just to, again, I think it was in his presentation, but to discuss that further on manpower, trucks, availability of people during the daytime hours of Monday through Friday. So, I mean, I'm not in that position because I don't do that job, but
Understood.
I think he would be able to come back and talk to you more about it down the road if that was something you were considering cutting.
From my recollection of past discussions from the chief is that you have to have 2 people to, I think, get on a truck.
Mhm.
And if you have 1 per diem, you have to wait for someone to get there in order for you to get on the road. where having the two, you're just that much faster and that was my understanding of the basis.
I don't disagree. I would like to understand what the volunteer fire company has done to try to absorb that before they just bump the budget because the ARPA funds went away. So could we put pressure on something else? Could we extend out planned purchase for this year to absorb that? Just,
Sure.
I'd like to know behind the scenes what happened there. Because we all knew the ARPA funds were gonna go away.
So
That's-
in that same section, I have a question about the ambulance association. So I remember when Logan was presenting and their finances were basically net zero because they're not really collecting a lot of revenue. So if you cut the 25,000 from their request of 250, do we have any idea what that means? Like what would they cut?
So they were 225 last year. They had requested a $50,000 increase. We voted to approve a $25,000 increase. So I'd like to look to it as we increase their budget by 25 instead of cutting it by 25. I know that's semantics, but they also have a building that they own on Baines Crossing. And that building has some value. And I would think to satisfy and Logan said, and I like the ambulance. I like the way they communicate with us. But Logan said that money, when asked, where would that money go? He said, would go into their operating costs. And I think that was great. But they have the rest of this year and they got all of next year to sell it to still make it work for this budget. I think if they took that building and sold it to someone who was an entrepreneur in town, no names mentioned, but would buy it for $100,000, put 100 into it and sell it for 250 or 275. I want to hold their feet to the fire a little bit to have them move on that building rather than just have this money come in and then it just sits there. So, and I will have discussions with Logan and the ambulance to say, what can we do to help you move that building? The deed restriction was the tough part and they got that changed. Now it's just a matter of putting it for sale and moving it. So.
Bob, I had a question on that from
Yes.
last night. I understand what you were saying, like how you were explaining it, but I didn't understand so they cannot have any profit, correct? So if they sell this building,
But I think they can put it into operating expense,
Which-
so they can't show it into like a profit line, no, but I think they can show it into their expense line. And they can draw from it.
Yep.
I'm not as
can they,
familiar,
can they
Amy.
span it out over several years, or does it have to be?
Again, I'm not sure about that.
I'm just wondering if they do sell that building, what happens?
Yeah, I know he said when asked the question, you would put the money towards his operating expense, so I don't know whether he's delved into it or not. Lou, you might have an answer?
Is this because it's a not-for-profit?
Well, they're a 501c3,
Right,
so,
but you can sell a building for a profit, even if you are a 501c3 organization. It just creates a pool of funds. They won't pay taxes on it. And so long as that isn't the normal course of business for the organization, there's no problem with selling something for a profit. You just can't do it a lot. But in this case, a one-off.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if they
So-
could if they would be able to, split that money up over the course of, 5-10 years for their operating expenses, or if it has to be allocated to 1 year, or how that works.
It
It doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
That's good.
I
to
don't
know.
think.
if they didn't have that asset, I would have thought about this line differently, because I did believe him when he said they're running pretty tight.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Do
Came
we-
across that way last night. That you-
Do we have confidence that that's not gonna go into an account that we as the town don't have transparency into? Is that gonna become our money as opposed to the town money has been used in other presentations?
Well, I think Logan was pretty clear that he'd come back pretty much at any time and give us his financials, so.
Okay,
I don't have a worry with that. And if we do know, I mean, we're gonna know if he sells it. And if he sells it, we're gonna know that we'll see, there'll be something in the paper or something with public record of what he sold it for. So, I mean, the best way to tell that is, okay, we'll cut your budget by that amount until you let us know where the money went. I don't think it's gonna get to that. I think it's gonna be pretty transparent.
okay. All right, we have several other factions in town that have funding that they control that we don't have full transparency into, and I don't want to blossom another one.
I understand.
Thank you.
Bob, regarding B 2005 medical insurance, I'm curious, is that cost of insurance increases or is that number of lives? Because that's going up about 40%.
So it's a combination of two things. We have, a couple of employees that, came into the highway department that have families and a couple of retired that didn't, it was husband and wife. We also have a couple of employees in town hall that didn't take insurance and now they are. Husband's retiring, they need insurance. So it's a combination of people taking it that didn't have it and then some insurance that's changing from a single plan to a family plan.
Okay. So it's
And the increase in itself. There's an increase also.
So if it were cost of insurance rates only, that would be alarming, but more lives makes sense.
Yes.
My last question is around, on the B 27. So you had mentioned that this was a wash because the labor and wages were going up about 29,000, but there was some of these savings that were coming out. So I see that some of these negatives are around town road maintenance and another big chunk is due to snow removal. So
Yeah, so there's a wash between B 2702 and B 27025 rentals. We were asked, I think it was Brett that asked, that when we rent equipment, we rent an excavator from time to time. Why don't we show that on a separate line rather than just have it be part of our town road maintenance? So to do that, this highway department decided to put 15,000 in rentals. We got an excavator coming in about another week for a week. And then take it out of where it normally would have been, which would have been in 2702. So that's one, that's a wash. What was the other one, Winona?
it's snow removal, it looks like.
Which line item is that?
Well, let me see.
Are you
It
talking
was,
about an
overtime.
2708 B and A? So, yeah, I think it was Sarah Nelson that said, you know, we've had now a string of years without as much snow. I know myself, I haven't used my snow blower more than once in the last 3 years. So she said, why do we budget so much more? Wouldn't we be better off to follow the trend, consider that it's probably not going to be that bad. And if we do have a crazy storm, everybody will know it. And we can go for an appropriation if we need extra money for that one particular year. Because it seems like the heavy snow winter now is the outlier. It's no longer the norm. And why hit taxpayers with more funds than needed if we keep seeing that we're not getting these big snow years? So that's why we decided. That was a conversation with the highway department. He actually fought me on how much I dropped that. He didn't think we should have dropped it that far. And that overtime line above that is just strictly overtime, has nothing to do with the snow removal. But we could appropriate, if we have an awful winter with a lot of snow we didn't expect, we could go back and get an appropriation if need be.
Thanks, Bob.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
the medical insurance?
Yes.
Is we obligated to one system for the town, or can we?
So we work through, there's a group called CCM, Connecticut Council of Municipalities, and they look for the best groups for the 169 cities and towns. We use Kerma, I believe. And we do that with other things too. We use Titan when it comes to electricity and things like that. Different brokers that give us a better price because it's a group that's doing it. So at this point, I don't know if an individual one for one would be as competitive as someone that's selling insurance through this group to most of the cities and towns. I think Kerma is the #1 insurance for most cities and towns in Connecticut. They also handle like our workman's comp and things like that.
It's workers' comp. Women work now.
Huh? Workman's comp.
Workers' comp.
Workers' comp.
Women work now.
What did I say? Workman's comp?
Yes,
Workers' comp, isn't it?
it's okay. Don't worry. We're old.
I'm not gonna tell you the score.
My wife has texted me a quarter, so.
So, sorry, it's really B 2700, but I had to go to the A line because it's revenue. So the transfer stickers, A
Which one are we
5.01 and A 5.02, which is small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. I thought we put the stickers in because it was gonna help us put money forward to cap the landfill when we needed to.
No, it's not what we did, but.
Okay,
All right, so-
educate me.
I'm going to 501. So two things. With the stickers, we see the transfer stickers at 24,000. We
Mm.
actually brought in close to 40,000 on the stickers, but because it's a 2-year program and we don't want to see peaks and valleys, we deferred
Yep.
money to the next year. So next year, the line item will be similar rather than bringing 41 year and 10 the next, because next year the stickers are $10, $20 instead of 40, because it's only good for 1 year. To answer your question, Gary, does it help? Yes, but we can't bring in revenue and assign it to a line for use in the budget. So it has to come into the general fund,
Right.
and then it can be appropriated out of the general fund back again. So we even did that with, last year, we defunded the walking floor trailer.
Yep.
De-obligated it rather. It had to go back to the general fund before we could then ask for an appropriation to get the other truck. So even though the money's coming back to town, and it's going into the general fund, and it can't help but say it offsets the bulky waste pile, but it just can't go from coming in and go right to that line. It has to go back to the general fund first.
No, and that's fine. I'm concerned that we've got that looming cap of the landfill that we put the stickers in for. Are we actually putting money away for that, or down the road, are we
It's
gonna
in-
have to?
It's
Okay.
in capital. We
Okay.
I think we put another $25,000 away this year in capital. So it should be the last
That's,
page.
you're doing a great job, Bob.
So, should be on here. Okay, well, it's actually dropped it from 25 to 15.
All right.
And the reason we did that is because since we put the bulky waste fees in, we've got less track of people, because it was free before. Everybody and their brother can come and drop whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. We're getting people from other towns dropping in because we're the only free game in town.
Right.
Because that number's been cut down so much, we think we've extended the life of the bulky waste pile. So we might get an extra 4, 5, 8 years out of it because we have less people dumping in it. But we had these people that were fence
Oh, yeah.
contractors dumping piles and piles of picket fence in there, or stockade fence. So
No.
they're not coming anymore.
I completely agree, but we are putting away for that cap as we
We are.
communicate. Perfect. That's all I
So
wanted to
we
hear.
put it 25 the last 2 years and 15 this year so far.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Because I have 8 stickers.
You only paid for one. Any other
You got anything,
questions?
Carl?
So
No,
no. I'm just,
No, we're gonna chew on it over the weekend. Monday, we're gonna have, further discussions as to what we're thinking about. Are we gonna? So the budget,
do you have the calendar with you?
the timeline right now, we are March 6th. Board of Selectmen present budget to Board of Finance on the 11th, Monday. We're gonna review the general government budget. And Wednesday, Board of Ed is gonna present to us. The following Monday, we'll review that budget. And then,
So it looks like you're not gonna really come back to me with recommendations until after you've seen the Board of Ed budget also and discuss them both.
So we do know the percentage that they're bringing to the table though, or can we not speak of that tonight?
So I say that again?
We know what percentage they're going up. So we
You,
could,
it's not my meeting. You can speak whatever Mike tells you. Whatever you guys can speak about is up to you guys, but you know the percentage.
Let's not
But-
ruin,
yeah,
let's
I'm
not
not-
ruin the surprise.
I mean, if you put this, if you know the percentage and you take this budget with the cover sheet and go home and manually put it in there and figure it out, you have an idea where we are.
right, so if they're going up almost 3.5%,
Well, how many dollars is that? Do you know?
50,000?
So if you take 550 plus the 482, that puts you at about a little over $1 million, and I get 910 to spend if we decided to spend it all. And it's just because we have 910 to come in, doesn't mean we have to spend 910. We could spend less, but it's there. So I would say then the Board of Finance would have to make a decision on who cuts what. I will tell you this, the Board of Selectmen 2 years in a row, when the Board of Finance has said to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed, we need to cut a number. Let's say use a $300,000 number for a number. And the Board of Selectmen went out of the way to cut a bigger number than the Board of Ed did the last 2 years. And I already reminded the superintendent that that's not happening this year. Unless you dictate to the Board of Selectmen, you must cut a number. If you just say between two, you figure it out, cut 300,000. I'm not taking the bigger hit this year, not when I have a capital budget that has to be paid attention to. Unless you tell me to cut capital, and then that's a different story.
I like this meeting. You guys are on a mission. We need to have more basketball games.
I mean, just so we're okay, we're, as far as this budget timeline's concerned, everybody, I think, there's no set time for us to send, the Board of Selectmen budget back to them, but the Wednesday, March 27th, they're gonna present back to us any budget changes, so I would just be prepared for Monday. By the end of it, we should have a pretty good idea as to what we want, if any, changes to this budget.
Michael, I will plan on being at your meeting on Monday in case there's questions that you need to ask about our budget. I'll be here that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, because there's no other particular time when when it says we're gonna present to them our changes. That's our time to make changes and to make recommendations to Bob and the rest of the selectmen this Monday. So just make sure everyone has reviewed this. If you have questions or you have, concerns. Do we have, Amy, do we have minutes
What's most of the time? I've been drinking.
from the meeting where the library and NSAA and Recreation Committee,
Yes.
are those,
You sent those and then I sent the other two.
okay,
So there should be two emails, one from you and then I responded with the other 2 minutes.
okay,
Because what we used to do is, Laura, I used to send the minutes to Christine and Antoinette, and Christine would review them and then send them to the whole board. So I don't know if you're supposed to be reviewing them or it's fine if I'm fine with sending them to everyone. We just kind of didn't know what was the protocol. So it's kind of up to you whether, you wanted me to send them to you and then. Well, they need to go to Antoinette first.
Okay.
But Christine, I would copy Christine on that and then Christine would review and send it to. I just didn't know if it was a
because
matter
there
of
was
protocol.
usually there was financial discussions that were taking place during every meeting.
Yep.
And I think Christine would also kind of give you a backup on, yeah, those numbers are right, or give you a number, put a number in there if it was different.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
really. I kind of stay away from putting numbers on the minutes. But I just didn't know if it was a matter of protocol.
Yeah, I'm fine with you submitting them, just copy me.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
fine.
I'll just end up copying
Yeah.
it for now on.
No, we don't want to hold up.
Great,
the
it's great reading
process.
material.
I'm just, you have a nice, like, just going on the February 7th minutes, you have a list of, kind of what these people talked about and what they were hoping for in the budget. Not necessarily numbers, but so it kind of helps us looking at whatever the Board of Selectmen decided about their budgets, whether or not they went up or down or stayed the same. And
It's just difficult to put numbers because they change every meeting and nothing's set in stone. So if, someone just watches one meeting, they get that number stuck in their head and.
yeah, I'm not asking to put numbers on there.
I'm just explaining.
Yeah, okay.
So we kind of keep it to,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's more vanilla than,
And I always,
Okay.
especially during budget season, I attach the link to the meeting so that anyone can easily go back and watch it
Oh,
for the
that's-
detail.
We
Okay,
did have
good.
an issue about 3 or 4 years ago where I think the number got kind of skewed a little bit. It was the number, but it wasn't exactly what the actual number should have been. And we had to go back and revise it. Like, I think we approved the minutes and we had to go back and then I think it was Dan Spring, we were like, well, let's just keep it as bland with those numbers, or if, numbers were discussed. something along the lines like that. And then we can always go back and say, hey, well, this was the actual number and pull it from the actual budget or the actual source document.
We can note that in the approval too.
Yeah.
If there's any change
Yeah.
before acceptance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we do as amended when,
Yep.
if we do have a change. I'm just saying, like, you have a good, breakdown of what each person who presented said. So, so I would encourage everybody to look at the minutes when we're talking about, when you're reviewing this budget. If you have a question about any particular group that presented, she's got them in the minutes.
Like, I have a new guy question.
You may.
So the presentation, we see what actually happened in 22-23. We got the approved budget for 23-24, and now the proposed budget for 24-25.
Yes.
But we don't see where we are, where we think we are this year on a year-to-date basis. And do we have any information as to if any of the approved budget for 23-24, if any of those numbers are materially different than what was approved?
So you're asking for copies of the most recent profit and loss statement, is that it?
I don't know if I'm just looking for the.
You're looking for a forecast for 23-24.
Yeah, exactly. And-
So,
Do that.
and I can give you I can ask Susan Pike for the most current profit and loss, which is usually about 60 days behind, because we have
Okay.
to reconcile with the school. It doesn't always happen in a timely fashion. Again, that's not the school's fault, it's just a matter of get the numbers together. So I could give you one that would be through, say March, probably through January.
I guess that'd be great. But if we know of any material differences between what's been approved and what's going to be spent, to me, that'd be,
So with the
Equally
Board of
important.
Selectmen and myself worked on that in building the budget. I used one as a guide all the time. And that's when I went back to the departments and said, well, we did this within town hall in the highway garage ourselves in-house before you guys even saw it. So I would say to the assessor's office, to the tax collector, you haven't spent this, why are you asking for it again? And so we have done that legwork, but I'd be glad to give you the profit and loss too. That was part of my building of the budget to do it that way, so.
So it is included?
Hmm?
So it is kind of built in?
Well, yes, because it's a tool we use to build a budget from within, from the town hall and the highway department. But we can share it with actually the one I would send, give you now is probably newer than the one I used when I started building this last month, so. But things trend, so at the end of December, we knew we had used so many months in a percentage of the year. So everyone should have been at that percent. If they're way over or way under, I would ask why. We've had some of the nonprofits just today, Polka would ask for their 32,000 from last year. We've had 3 in there. I highlighted them I gave you a color copy this time. I want to treat you guys special. There's 3 blue lines under the nonprofits and they haven't asked for money, nor have they got their money, asked for money from last year yet. So they're in the budget, but, I don't know, we're going to, were you gonna call those, or do we say we're gonna wait to see what they did? The 3
Subsidies.
nonprofits that.
23.
I understand they'll provide you a letter
These 3.
with their.
Right, so usually we get a letter when someone says, you could send it like Polka Neighborhood did today, and we approved their 32,000, but these 3 I highlighted in blue, we never got a request for this year, well, although they've been on our books for a number of years, but they haven't asked for the money from this past year yet either. So do we call and say, hey, don't you want your money, or do we not say anything, and then,
Well, for the
take-
Elite Center,
Uh-huh.
do we know of any residents from North Stonington that are?
yeah, so the reason they're in there, Amy, is when I was a selectman, not the first selectman, we went and verified all these people to see what they did for the town. I found out a lot about some of these people. I didn't even know who they were. I didn't know how much TVCCA did with Meals for Wheels in town. I actually rode with them one day and delivered Meals for Wheels, which was kind of cool. And it was, it's, you don't even know these things are happening and they are. So, but I would hate to take money from an organization that could really use it just because maybe they don't have enough organizational skills to call out and ask for the money. So if they don't ask pretty soon, have Laura call them and say, hey, this is in the budget from last year. Do you want it? And we can get a request from this year. But we know like Pawcatuck Neighborhood does amazing things for us.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So did I understand you correctly, Mike, when you said that your expectation is Monday, we all weigh in on this and say yay or nay?
Yes.
Why wouldn't we wait for the school? Because my concern is this, there's one budget in the town. And it includes the school. I want to see the whole enchilada before I decide yay or nay on anything. But that's just my perspective.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, I want you to be prepared to have any questions that you have on a particular, items, and a general sense of, kind of where you think we need to be. I just want to have a substantive, so it doesn't mean we have to definitively give them the number, because you're right. We have to see.
Let's see the whole thing.
We have
Yep.
to see the whole thing. There's just, I'm saying in the budget, on the budget timeline, there's no specific say, we then give our guidance to Board of Selectmen, or we give our guidance to Board of Education.
Right.
It's kind of, this is our one shot to really focus on this part of the budget. Just want everyone to make sure that you have any questions you have ready to go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Bob.
I noticed no one asked any questions about B.100, and I have no problem answering questions about that. I don't want
About
anybody
your
to feel,
increase in salary?
I don't want anybody to feel weird about it. I hate the fact it's the first thing on my budget, but I wasn't ducking.
Yeah, well,
You know.
I mean, we have
You
other
could talk.
things.
you could
Well,
talk about
let's-
that at some other
Let's
Yeah.
discuss this on Monday.
Yes, it's
Let's
that's.
let's make Bob sweat.
All right, unless someone had any additional questions for Bob right now, I think, we all got to get our hands into this a little bit more before we have, any real substantive discussions on it. So with that said, I think we should just move on to the next agenda item. So I
thank you
don't
all.
necessarily, I mean, when this is more for our, our viewing and, we don't have anybody here from the Board of Education. I think to Lou's point, if you look at the financial report with projections that the Board of Ed gave us, that Bill sent to me, they have the budget, the account year to date, they have projections and what it's going to do to the balance in the end. And, there's a lot of items here where it says, budget amount is too low, or there's got a good explanation as to why there's an increase or a decrease in their projection. I mean, overall, on a $15 million budget, 15.168, they have a positive balance of 61,965 when all said and done. So I think it's, they're pretty, it's not too bad. The one that, kind of saves them from being under budget is that tuition for special ed. They're not outplacing everybody. And it's going to save them $101,000. But, Bob, have you seen this? Have you, it's kind of like what Lou's talking about now. It's basically the latest, they don't like to call it profit and loss because they
So
don't
it's
make.
like how their budget from last year is trending. Is that
Yeah.
what it is?
Exactly. So, I mean, I guess if you can get that to me, January 1, by Friday, And I'll send it out to everybody, so if you have them for the weekend, if you want to look at that. So expect that email, guys. Lou? Okay. Anyone have any comments at this point on the financial report?
Some of the numbers he did is, moved from one budget to another, but I couldn't find where he moved it from. Give me 1 second here.
Well, it moved from non-lapsing, one,
That one we can find, there's another one. Less sports includes repair, move from under budget tuition. All right, what is the under budget savings in tuition to offset?
where's that?
Page 2, halfway down, SPED contract students.
Yeah, I imagine that's the services that they're doing here. I don't know, without having them here, basically, I know what he's saying. They're saying is that number that I was referencing earlier, the 100,958 on page 3, because there's less outplacement and because there's additional grants. That's what's offsetting that, what's offsetting that big cost or that big under budget.
Yeah, that's outplacement grants. Right, and what is the outplacement? And then if you look at page 5, moved a couple items to software, bottom of the page, dues and memberships. Moved them to what software?
Probably those are software costs for, annual service contracts and whatnot.
23, 630, guarantee. It says we're gonna project a balance of 96. Okay. All right, so we got questions. All right.
I plan, like, when, I just wanted you to have this, and if there's any big red flags that come out to us, then we'll, if we need to bring them in, we'll just keep an eye on it. Once, the Board of Ed comes in and presents, if you guys have any questions based upon this, I think that's the time
To ask them.
to ask them.
So Carl, like specifically that row 890 that said moved a couple items to software, if you look up to row 690, that includes the change.
Row 6.
Wait, same page.
Yeah. Too many pages. 690, okay, yep. And went to where, I'm sorry?
So the 690 moved from dues and fees is the dues where it says move to software. So 690 and 890 are the two reciprocals.
Okay, just trying to figure out how we did that.
Yeah,
So mark your papers for when they come in. They'll be here on the 13th.
yeah, like I have some questions concerning like 611 area where they have things in the budget and they haven't spent any of the money in certain accounts year to date. They haven't spent. And art supplies, physical education, there's chunks in here where they have not spent any. And the projection goes and they're gonna end up spending the money. But is that, they haven't taken the distribution of that money out yet? Or what's going on with that? Because there's like 3 physical educations. I'm assuming one's probably elementary, one's middle school, one's high school, but physical, health is the same one. But they're running, it looks like, in deficits on office supplies and other accounts. So I think just seeing how the distribution and why these aren't getting spent halfway through the budget would be a good question to ask.
Yeah. All right, we also got a copy of the non-lapsing account. Bill did say he's gonna give this to me every time I get a financial report as we requested. Um, and you see that they have, what the balance is 316,098.68. They do have, projects in the works. One of the bigger ones is that irrigation system, but they don't have, I don't think they have the money, it's out to bid, so we're preparing the bid. Anyone have any questions about the non-lapsing account?
Can I ask about the last page, the capital page?
Sure.
So can I assume that the capital plan that they provided for current fiscal year and then 5, 10, and 20 are not included in the broader Board of Selectmen capital plan at this point?
My understanding was there was no capital needs for the school for this year.
That's my understanding as well. I think, again, we do have a capital committee. Gary is chairing that and, part of the main thing is figuring out what is capital at the school versus what's an expense. What's the town own, what's the school own. So that's one of their main charges, and that's gonna help us going forward with this overall capital plan and where these capital projects fit in. But something like parking lots, it's probably not gonna be a school capital item. School roofs is probably not gonna be a school capital item. Does that answer your question, Mariana? Anything else on the non-lapsing? So just prepared, like, again, review this for the 13th when the Board of Ed is going to be here, and that can be part of our questions as to, where they're coming up with the projections for next year when they're either short or over budget or under budget in the present one. Okay, on to agenda item number 6, review of minutes. We have minutes from January 17th. Again, Amy, I got to commend you because, all the stuff you have in there from that audit, it was Greek. But, you did a great job. Anyone have any questions about the January 17th minutes? I move to approve the January 17th minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 0. Motion carries. We have February 7th. I'll move to accept those minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion on the February 7th minutes? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 6-0. And we have one other one, Amy?
On the 24th,
21st.
21st.
Let's see if I. Twenty-first. That's when, Registrar of Voters came. And the Ambulance Association and, Wheeler Library and Parks and Recs.
I did have one question on that one.
Sure.
Did I, present Logan correctly? North Stonington Ambulance Association Captain Logan Taylor?
Logan Taylor,
Yep,
president, I believe.
oh, president. I said captain.
Yeah, president.
All right, we can make that change.
Mhm.
I don't think it's substantive.
Make a motion to accept the minutes as amended with the change for 2/21.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, Amy. All right, public comment.
Nobody online.
Oh, Brian's on.
Go ahead, Brian.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, he's got unmute.
I think we're okay. He has to unmute.
Brian, you got unmute. He's unmuted.
We were able to hear.
Yeah, they did say they could hear us. Brian, are you trying to get through still? Give you 30 seconds to come on. Bob, can you send me your summary sheet, via email so I can send it to Sarah? Yes, definitely. Brian, you can do public comment at the meeting on Monday before or after. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.